Hi, this is Jeffrey Kerr at Kerr Financial Group, and today we want to review the first 6 months of 2021. Uh, Oftentimes, years are defined by the events that happen within them, and 2020 is an historic year with all the things that went on. But 2021 has a few things, and especially some things within the financial markets we'll get to. But I think the tragic storm and weather event in February in Texas, where there was snow and sleet and freezing rains and record low temperatures, a once in 100-year type weather event, which collapsed the energy and power infrastructure, and caused many deaths due to hypothermia just because there wasn't any heat. And another event of 2021 was the Ever Given cargo ship blocking the Suez Canal, which disrupted many economic and flows of materials and like that. But I think when it comes to the financial markets, there are some big, events that have happened in the first 6 months of 2021. So let's review them. First of all, the year started out with a group of individual investors using a forum on Reddit, Wallstreetbets, taking on the established Wall Street um, firms, and GameStop was the battlefield. The Wall Street had made the short bets against GameStop's stock, and the Reddit group, Wall Street Bets, went long it, caused the price to move higher, and short squeezed the Wall Street firms. Melvin Capital was a hedge fund that had a big short position on GameStop, and they lost 49% in the first quarter of 2021, and they're down 46% for the first 6 months. Melvin needed a capital injections from the Citadel Group and from Steve Cohen's hedge funds in order to survive. And at the peak of this battle, Wall Street and the brokerage firms restricted sell orders on GameStop and the other targets from the Wall Street Bets crowd, which then brought the battle to another level. And I think it continues. It was an interesting. It's to be. I think the first part of this dispute is going to continue going on. I believe. I think it'll be interesting to see what other fallout and damage happens to Wall Street. But also, I'm sure there are people in the Wall Street bets crowds who have taken some losses too, just from inexperience and like that. But again, I don't think this dispute goes away soon. Archegos Capital Management failed in March. It's a fund that was taking big bets and then using leverage to make the big bets in very speculative positions. They got a margin call from their brokerage where they're doing their business, got a margin call and couldn't meet it. So they failed. And it really sent some waves throughout the markets, and some stocks really took a hit because of this. They somewhat bounced back, but Bloomberg reported that Archegos lost $20 billion in 2 days. The Wall Street Journal only reported only $8 billion in 10 days. Either total, it doesn't matter. Archegos failed, and those type of things, are can turn into systemic type problems, depending on the parties who are involved. Some other developments in the first 6 months: SPACs, Special Purpose Acquisition Corps. They were hot for a while, and what they are a company that raises capital and then looks for a business to buy. So there was a lot of speculation both around the SPACs that were raising the money and also the targets that they were looking to buy. And so it's kind of cooled off in the second part of the second quarter. But I think it's something that will define 2021. And I think that, there's going to be some opportunities there, but it's also going to be some, I think a lot of carnage too with some bad decisions in terms of where to deploy that capital. Also, cryptocurrencies. The Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum, and all the others, took a big price jump. They've all kind of come back. I think, cryptos, far from being an expert on it, but I think cryptos are going to be around. But I think there's also a lot of obstacles, and you need to have wider acceptance of the cryptocurrencies, greater liquidity and conversion, and I think you've got to prove that they're going to be a store of value for them to be become wider spread and more used. So the numbers for the stock market for the first 6 months: Dow Jones Industrial Average up 12.7% for the 6 months, S&P 14.5%, NASDAQ 12.5%. Russell, the small cap index, was the big winner, up almost 17%. Some other areas to note, which I think is interesting: natural gas was up 40% in the 6 months. Kind of didn't, that was under the radar screen. Coffee up 29%, corn up 27%, crude oil up 24%. So some of the commodities were a lot higher. Gold though was down 6.4%. In the bond market, the U.S. Barclays Ag Index, which is a widespread fixed income index, which includes governments and corporates and high yields and munis and like that, had a total return loss of 1.6%. So that means, including the interest payments from the bonds in the index, it was still down 1.6%, which is, a function of higher interest rates. The 10-year U.S. Treasury began the year with a yield under 1% at 91 basis points, closed June at 1.44%, so that was down in price, up in yield. Dollar index up 2.78%, means the dollar was stronger. The dollar traded, weaker for much of the first quarter, kind of came back at in late May and June, but largely a sideways trade. This is an important area to keep an eye on because of the influence on the international markets. So looking forward, what can we look for in the second half of 2021? I think it's going to be a little more challenging than the first 6 months, and I think part of that's going to be on the year-over-year comparisons. As companies, compare the third and fourth quarter of 2021 versus the third and fourth quarters of 2020. It's going to be a little more challenging. Second quarter of 2021 obviously was a lot better than the second quarter where we were shut down in 2020. So those comparisons in revenues and earnings and just general economic data, I think, are going to be more challenging in the second half of the year. So I think it bears to be watching. Now, the other side of that could be just, as the reopening expands and, the economy can strengthen if people kind of, get back to a normal that it was pre-pandemic. Hard to know, hard to predict how that's going to play out, but it could be fine. But I think those comparisons become more challenging, which then becomes, maybe a headwind for the markets. Second thing I think is that the markets are overvalued. There's little question about that. But valuations in shorter periods of time often don't matter. So, but they do matter, I think, in longer periods of time. And also, if, the data from corporate earnings and economic data weaken or kind of slow down a little bit, the valuations could, become another negative. I think inflation is going to be with us for a while. I think it's, the Fed and the monetary mandarins usually use the buzzword transitionary. I think it's going to be more than that. I think some of this is going to be baked in, and I think that the markets are going to, recognize this and have to deal with it. That doesn't mean that the rally falls apart, but I think you'll see different leadership, and I think it could be a headwind over the overall markets and fixed income and like that. But I think it could just change the tenor in different sectors, which we're going to outperform. I think the Wall Street bets crowd is going to be interesting to see, what happens here. They refer to themselves as the Army of Apes, and again, I don't think they're going away. I don't know whether there'll be another, Melvin Capital type event, and also, do I think some of the people from the within the Army of the Apes, are probably a little bit above their heads. Hopefully, they use the opportunity to learn and try to be successful. But I think it could be some damage on both the established Wall Street side as well as the individual investors. So I think, it's keep an eye out. Be careful. There's risks in the market in the second half, and I've got some strategies that we're following. And if there's any questions that you have concerning, the things that are going on, and also some of the events that we're going to be facing, happy to discuss them with you. And anybody wants to give me a call or send me an email. So until next time, good luck. Thank you.